Hello, and thank you for lending your ears to Ratehub.ca's Real Money Talk podcast. In this show, we give you the real talk on all things money. We eliminate the fine print, we junk the jargon, and we explain how you can make smarter financial decisions. We're not millionaires, we're thousandaires, and we know you are too, so this show is for you. We want to talk about money because it affects everyone, rich and poor. Money shouldn't only be the occupation of the 1%, but rather the 99%. Money isn't everything, but it is everywhere. We want to educate about money through story. We Canadians ignore money, hoping if we do, like many other problems, it'll go away. Our goal is to make money an everyday discussion. This podcast is brought to you by EQ Bank and the EQ Bank Savings Plus account. Want the flexibility of an everyday checking account with a 2% interest rate? You got it. You'll also get free Interac e-transfers, free bill payments, no minimum balance, and no monthly fees. For easy banking that earns without any everyday banking fees, switch to EQ Bank today. Hey, thank you for tuning in. My name is Tyler, and I'll be your guide for Season 2 of the show. If you want to get in touch, find Ratehub on your favorite social media channels or email us, realmoneytalk@Ratehub.ca. If you like the show, do me a favor, share it with your friends, give us a follow, leave a comment, and follow us on the journey to choosing better. For those of us who thought ski jumping was the wildest sport at the 2002 Winter Olympics in Salt Lake City, Utah, there was a surprise that had all us viewers on the edge of our seats. Skeleton was on the official lineup for the first time since 1948. If you've never seen it before, skeleton involves plunging head first down a steep, twisty ice track atop a sled that's barely more substantial than a cafeteria tray. 2002 was also the year Jon Montgomery discovered the sport of skeleton. In his early 20s at the time, the Manitoba-born Montgomery was visiting Calgary with his parents, saw a skeleton competition at Canada Olympic Park, and fell so deeply in love that he began competing himself almost immediately. And 8 years later, representing Canada on our own Olympic skeleton team, he won gold, bringing awareness of this formerly little-known sport to an entire nation. While Montgomery may have discovered his Olympic sport relatively late in life, sport is in his soul. And nearly 2 decades later, both he and his wife, Darla Deschamps Montgomery, a fellow skeleton racer, volunteered generously for sports-focused charities including Kidsport and RightToPlay, an international organization that works to provide opportunities for all kids to participate in sport and creative play. Montgomery believes in pushing himself outside his comfort zone, an attribute that's helped him succeed in widely diverse endeavors. This is his 8th year as the host of The Amazing Race Canada, a role that won him a Canadian Screen Award in 2016. He's also co-hosted the Junos with the iconic Canadian performer Jan Arden. He's a father of 2, an automotive auctioneer, and that's not even the complete list. Montgomery took time out of his busy schedule to speak with the Real Money Talk podcast about his thoughts on what it takes to make it as an Olympian, how to overcome the financial hurdles, and staying motivated in life. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to the Real Money Talk podcast. With me, I have Editor-in-Chief of Money Sense, Sandra Martin.
Hello.
And I have Canadian Olympian Jon Montgomery.
Hello, how are you guys?
Doing all right. We always kick things off with a money mistake or a money makeup. Did you guys have a money mistake or makeup off the top of your head?
I have one. I mentioned it to you, Tyler, when we were setting up earlier, and it was a reminder to me of the concept of false economy. So I have a personal computer that I use for, like my little projects, my side hustles. That is a MacBook Pro from 2011. And it's been making funny noises for a few years now. I took it into the Apple store and they said, yeah, your drive is fine. That's the fan. But it is a vintage machine. I love that something from 2011 is vintage now. So we can't fix it. If you could find a third-party vendor to fix it, they might have the ancient fan that's ailing. But I was like, it's fine. I'm not the kind of person who ever gets the latest model of the phone or whatever. I was just like, I'm going to let this limp along. Lo and behold, now that stores are closed and I can't actually go into the Apple store and with the hopes that they can transfer my files, my computer died last night. That is false economy. So what might happen is when it comes time to do taxes, I'm going to have to rebuild everything from emails that I have that are in the cloud touch wood, they can transfer it, but what if they can't? That is like, if you multiply it by what you would charge somebody for your time on an hourly basis, think about charging yourself that for the false economy of not buying a new computer. So that's my lesson.
I guess my closest money lesson would be I spent $300 putting my kid in skating at like a fancy skating program, and he didn't pass that one. And then so I spent the $40 to put him in a city run skating program this time, and he also didn't pass this one. So now, but I'll probably just put him in the $40 one again and learn my $300 mistake.
I mean, is it a mistake though? I mean, it's experience,
Yes.
I have a fat credit coming to me from the city of Toronto. I signed my kids up for their next levels of life saving over March break and the week after, and obviously that's canceled. So I guess the future me should remember that this is money I've already spent, and it's, if I don't take advantage of it, because it would be very easy to forget that I've spent it now that it's out of my pocket. That would be like just basically throwing money in the wind.
Yeah. How about you, John?
Well, I guess I could share some insights on gouging and working with jobbers and providers and so on. So get an estimate before you get work done. Don't just assume that it is going to be reasonable, because in today's day and age, when somebody maybe has the opportunity to gouge you for a little bit of extra, they're going to take it, because, well, it's human nature to protect one's own personal interests in times of difficulty. And we have to start, I think, collectively thinking about the good neighbors and perhaps the elderly and the immunocompromised, and also those who are financially strapped in this time of need. And gouging isn't something that one should do to each other. And I got a bill this morning, and I seem to have been gouged a little bit for some materials and for some estimates that weren't asked for up front, and now I'm the bearer of a bigger bill than expected. So that's my row to hoe this morning before 9 a.m., but we'll get through it.
Yeah, those are always hard lessons. So we'll start. Your story is kind of an awesome one. I guess you're just an awesome guy. Like, were you always interested in pursuing the Olympics, or was it just after? Because you were like an auctioneer, right?
Correct. Yeah, that was my employment at that particular time in my life, and I had been doing the auctioneer racket since, I guess, well, the first exposure I had to that was the summer of 1998 in Winnipeg at what was then Canadian Auction Group Winnipeg, and that's where I became fascinated with the auctioneering aspect of the automotive industry and automotive trade. And I was going to school for car business, and that piqued my interest. But where the tobogganing and skeleton racing came about was from a passion developed in my formative years in Russell, Manitoba for Canada and being Canadian and wanting to represent Canada on the world stage. And skeleton was a means to an end primarily, but also a passion. And if you're looking at something as strictly a vehicle and a means to an end, but you don't have the passion for it, you're probably going to struggle when things get a little bit tough. And in any thing or something worth pursuing, there is going to be struggles. There's going to be strife. There are going to be ups and downs, but passion sees you through the low points. And I had that, and I had the interest, and I wanted to represent Canada. Skeleton was the means or the vehicle by which I was able to do so, because it was periphery and not something that a great deal of people tried their hand at and participated in. So the barriers to success were less from just sheer participation standpoint, but being a Canadian Olympian was the end goal, and I had to figure out a way to achieve that.
I read in an article that, well, I'll just quote you here. I saw a fella fly by me head first on his stomach. I thought it must be a horrible luge accident. And so you ran over to the ice house, asked what the hell's going on. And you were auctioneering at the time, and that's when you found out, well, this is what I'm going to do.
Yep. That's almost exactly. I can see it happening in my mind's eye right now as you say those words. I picture it all coming back. And I was there with my parents. They were in town doing just a visit to see where their youngest child was now calling home in Calgary. And I'd been there for about, I guess it'd be about 6 months or so. And I had come to town the end of August, and this was now end of February at the end of the 2002 Winter Olympic Games. And I had spent the week before watching my hometown hero, the guy that I grew up idolizing, Theo Fleury from Russell, Manitoba, win gold with the men's national hockey team.
Nice.
The women claimed gold as well. I think they had lost in 98 in Nagano, and it was the men's first gold in 50 years, not since 1948 in St. Moritz. And so Salé and Pelletier was still fresh in my memory. I was still berating the Russian and French judge for collusion, and all this was going on, and it was very, very new. And, we were all still riding on cloud nine, and my parents show up in town, and I saw this event. And in witnessing it, I knew that I had seen something that I would like to try myself. And then after that very first descent, it was a game changer. My life was, it was one of those TSN turning points. It was on a different trajectory after having tried it for one run. I went back and did it 3 more times that same night, but just one run was enough to know that I had found something that I could be passionate about. And I knew that that's what would have to happen. I would have to have a feeling in my stomach, in my heart of hearts, knowing that this was something that I would want to do a lot of if I was expecting to get anything out of it.
I can't even imagine what it must have been like standing at the top for your very first run down. But I guess you're just a speed guy at heart.
Yeah, those were the types of things that spoke to me. It was the adrenaline seeking aspects of the sport that allowed me to be excited about trying something that looked just so harebrained and crazy and bananas. I mean, I have said it before, but I gifted myself a skydiving experience at Skydive Toronto. It's in Base Borden, just north of Toronto, south of Barrie there. And at Skydive Toronto, that's where I celebrated my college graduation, and there was nobody willing to go with me, so I went by myself. But those types of things were what I was seeking out, and an opportunity to challenge myself. I'm scared of heights, and so I thought, this is a good way to get over being scared of heights. And I'm uneasy with them, but doing the things that I've done on The Amazing Race Canada and on my own volition, I have approached that fear, pushed past it, and come to terms with it. And now it no longer has a tremendous amount of power over me. It's still trepidation for sure, but I do have another fear that I need to work on, and that's being comfortable underwater. And it's giving me cause for pause now, and that's my next concerted effort to get over something that is holding me back.
Yeah, they say fear, if you fear something, you should move towards it.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. And I'll tell you what, in life, I've been scared to do just about everything that has brought meaning into my life. And that's from talking to girls that ended up being life partners with my wife, Darla, to trying skeleton racing, to going to auctioneer school, to going to college in Barrie, Ontario, to going to university in Texas. All these things were cause for pause. And I know from grade 11 physics, it might be the only thing that I remember, that overcoming inertia, overcoming not moving, is tremendously hard. It takes an incredible amount of energy to overcome sedentary position that we might find ourselves, or a body in life. And to just get that body moving, it requires an incredible amount of force and energy. But to keep it moving requires so much less then. And so it's the same for starting any journey. The first steps are undoubtedly going to be the hardest. Taking that step towards the things that scare us in life. That's the hardest part of the journey, just getting moving in towards the direction that you want to go. You don't even have to know where you're heading. You don't have to have a clear vision. You just have to start moving. And that's the hardest part. And I know that in my heart of hearts, that's where you got to dig deep and find the resolve to just take those first steps. And I'm going to have to take that towards a few new things. And this experience that we're having in the world today just makes it all the more relevant, all the more, I guess, realistic, that I need to take some steps towards some things that I might have been putting on the back burner because of the amount of effort that it's going to take, because of the amount of work that it's going to involve to reinvent myself, find a new business, find new opportunities to earn a living for myself and my family. It's not going to be easy, but it is where I will realize maybe the next great thing in my life. And I know that it's just waiting to be discovered if I can dig deep enough.
And so now the other thing, of course, moving towards fear and overcoming all the obstacles that stand in your way. One of the things in pursuing a lot of dreams is having the money to do so. You know, I went to university with the help of my parents, and then I mean, as a kid, I played higher level hockey, and I did not pay my parents back for that. And now paying for it myself, I find it's kind of pricey. But so, how did you fund your training? Like, how did making ends meet? And then, even if you want to go back to talking about surviving at university in Texas, there,
Yep.
And then, what would you tell future Olympians about funding?
Well, look, I can't sit here and pretend that I had the toughest row to hoe either in that regard. You and I sound like we come from similar backgrounds, and it's incredibly privileged, I'll be honest. I come from rural Manitoba, where I had two working parents and both middle class, and the costs of living in rural Manitoba aren't nearly as extraneous as they might be in the city. But in the same regard, you maybe don't have the same capacity to earn either. And so there is a bit of a wash there. But I came from privilege, and it's not that we were rich, but we had all that we needed. And I had, I guess, parents astute enough and brave enough to save for those things that they deemed to be the most important things they could give me in life. And that wasn't a free car, brand new off the lot when I was 16 years old. That wasn't important to my parents. I did end up with my grandma's car, but that was just by sheer luck and life circumstances and so on. And it was a 1980 Pontiac Acadian four-door. And ain't nobody going to get a lot of praise or love from a 1980 Pontiac Acadian four-door. Was rear-wheel drive, so it was a lot of fun. At any rate, they did save for my education. And I did have the opportunity to go to school without an incredible burden of student loans. I did take out some student loans and so on, but I had my parents to foot the majority of the bill, or at least set it up so that I didn't feel like I was disadvantaged. And they championed going to school. They championed that as the one gift they would give me. And if I screwed it up, I wasn't getting a second chance. And so I knew that there was the pressure to perform, because I wasn't going to get a free ride if I buggered it up. And so I did go to school with the support and backing of my parents. And I'll tell you, if you're going to take some risks in life, take the risk of bestowing, I guess, an education upon yourself. That's where you should take loans to realize personal growth. Because from there, once you have an education, you can find gainful employment and skills. And if that doesn't pan out, at least you can get a loan with the prospect of having and finding a job. But without any skill sets, without anything that you've worked towards in terms of an education or a trade, you're less employable. And that limits your options, therefore, moving forward. And so I did have gainful employment upon graduation from university, and I had a trade in being an auctioneer. And that provided me the springboard from which to find skeleton racing and to seek out opportunities in sport. And subsequently, each tool that I have put into my quiver, I've been able to piggyback on. And so from the auctioneering came public speaking, and that came out of sport and so on. And so I find myself having the capacity to do a few different things now, not being an expert at any of them, but a jack of a few trades. And the means by which I was able to go to school and leverage, I guess, student loans and lines of credit and so on were with the help of my parents, and then becoming equipped enough that a bank would look at you as not a big risk, is that this guy does have gainful employment. We will extend him some credit, and then you can use these tools to further yourself, your education, your opportunities, and your enjoyment for all intents and purposes, if you can find a passion. And I was lucky that I did have good guidance and support from my parents in shaping my, I guess, priorities, in giving me the notion that the education was going to be the one tool that I could leverage continually for the rest of my life, regardless of whatever path I wanted to embark upon.
Yeah, that's a great point that we talk about a lot on Ratehub and Money Sense is debt isn't necessarily a bad thing. You need debt to build a credit rating, which is what you're talking about here. If you use debt responsibly, not only can it help you achieve some of your life goals, it sets you up for future lending. Now that you have kids of your own, what's your view? I know parents have different takes on education. Some of them will say, we'll pay for half, even if they could afford to give their kids a full ride, because they want their kids to have that responsibility of working for it. But I mean, you say you really appreciate the fact that your parents said, we're going to gift this to you, you get one shot. Is that what you plan to do with your kids now? I know they're really young still.
Well, and you have to start thinking about it now, because I can't give them a shot at anything if I haven't thought about it today. And it requires me to start thinking about it now. Building those RESPs, the Registered Education Savings Plans. My dad sold HST, which is a similar type of a program. He was always hustling. He was a teacher, but because of his, I guess, connection to teaching and his notion, his knowledge rather, not just a notion, but his knowledge that education was the single greatest gift that you could give your children. He wasn't selling anything. He was just giving other parents an opportunity to save for their children's education. And my parents, neither one of them were hard sells, but my mom told me before I went to college that if I helped people get what they needed, I would in turn get what I wanted, whether it be a referral, whether it be a commission, whatever have you. And my chosen vocation was a salesperson in the automotive trade. And I can tell you right now that I've never sold a car, but I have helped some people solve their transportation problems. And I have looked at it like that. I worked for Jim Pattison Lease in their lease return department, and I'd send people to other dealerships. I would send people away knowing that I didn't have what they needed by asking a few pointed questions. You know, if they were looking to tow a fifth wheel and they were looking for a venture van, they were barking up the wrong tree. And while mine might have been amazingly priced, it wasn't going to fill their need. And so it's cliche to say, but I never sold a car. I did help solve transportation problems. But
I like it. Yeah.
The thing that we're doing today, and I will tell my children that, yes, they have the opportunity to study whatever they want and wherever they want, because I am going to work my level-headed best to, well, hopefully they're not choosing a doctorate program at Harvard, because that might be tough to come up with. But perhaps if that's the goal, they're gifted enough and smart enough to earn a scholarship, and I won't have to foot the bill. But we're not banking on that. We're going to bank on our kids being incredibly average and normal, and not gifted in sport or scholastics. And so we're going to expect to have to pay for university and post-secondary education, expecting and hoping that your kids will become the next Wayne Gretzky and earn a hockey scholarship, or be the next Stephen Hawking and earn an academic scholarship, is wishful thinking. And so we will be prepared financially, and we will make sacrifices here in the short term to be able to squirrel away some money. And the rhetoric and the conversation around education will be, this is privilege. This isn't something that everybody gets to benefit from, because there are incredible barriers to achieving this, and it's monetarily at this point in time. And it's sad, because, well, think of the great minds that don't get to be flexed because of a barrier to entry, like monetary barriers like that. Think of the people that couldn't become the doctor, and they end up doing something less impactful because they don't have that cash disposal at their fingertips. But if you plan right, and if you are thinking for the future, you can hopefully equip yourself with an education and opportunity to realize your full capacity.
Well, going back to Olympics for a second, because you became a competitive athlete kind of later in life, what if one of your kids said, you know what, I have this passion for X sport? Maybe it's something that was as surprising to the world as skeleton was the first year that it was in the Winter Olympics. How would you feel about that? And what advice would you give them about funding that's available or not available for Canadian athletes?
The types of sports that spoke to me were ones that were on the periphery, because I looked at things opportunistically, perhaps. And while I wouldn't suggest you just look at sports from what can I do that others aren't participating in that'll make it easier for me, you do have to, I guess, sorry, there's some kids underfoot here right now. You have to look at it, logically. And whatever my kids choose to do, I'll have to chat with them about doing it for the right reasons. Not to become an Olympic gold medalist because you don't think anybody's playing, but rather doing it because you love it. And if you love it and you want to go to the Olympics and that's an opportunity, then you work towards that. You set yourself up for that BHAG, that big, hairy, audacious goal at the end of the line, and you make the right moves to put yourself into a position for success. But I don't think you do something solely for the glory, solely for that, seeing yourself on top of the podium, wearing the Olympic rings. You do it because you love it. And if you love something and you have these goals, there will be multiple ways to get from point A to point B. It's not just a straight line, and it's not just one way. And thinking flexibly, creatively, staying positive, it's more psychological than it is anything. These are the components that will allow an individual to realize success. And success isn't going to be just the gold medal at the end of the line. Success might be becoming an Olympian. Success might be becoming a national team athlete, or at least attempting to. And through the process of, I guess, realizing and trying to see what you're made of and what your worth is in this chosen field of interest, you will learn so many lessons if and when you've got the right attitude. And attitude shapes our lives. It's our perspective. It's the one thing that we have control over. The outcomes aren't for you to decide. They're not for you to determine, because you're never playing in a vacuum. You're always competing against somebody else. You're always working in a dynamic and ever-changing landscape. And attitude will determine whether or not you feel success, whether or not you feel like the journey has been worthwhile. And that's only for you to determine and not other people. And it's how you look at these things that make that the reality in which you live.
Looking at... Sorry, go ahead, Tyler.
No, I was just going to add a small anecdote that playing the percentages is probably the worst idea. If you look at the chance that you'll make it into be an Olympian, and the chance that you'll, make it into the NHL or the MLB. But my buddy is trying to get his kid to pitch with his left hand, even though he's right-handed, so he can be a left-handed pitcher, because they're in dire need in the MLB, apparently.
Your buddy sounds like the kind of guy that is still waiting for Briax to come back.
Yeah.
And you know what? Just let your kid have fun. He'll pitch with whatever hand he wants to pitch with. And if he has the skill and talent to make the show, he'll make the show, man. But just set him up on the mound and throw some balls and have some fun.
Well, your attitude really is on display with every choice you make, it seems. I know you and your wife are both involved with different charitable initiatives. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you got involved and what you want to accomplish in giving your time to these organizations?
Well, I guess what we would like to accomplish is allowing others to realize what we've had the privilege to realize. We've had the privilege to realize our value, our worth, our ability, and we've realized all those through sport. We've realized our ability to be a part of a team, to be a part of something bigger than ourselves through sport. We've realized what it means to work collectively, collaboratively towards common goals. And we've realized how when we do it with other people, it's easier. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together, they say. And we've tried to go alone before, and I've realized the pitfalls and, the foolhardy nature of trying to go it alone. I don't know if you remember me competing at the 2014 Olympics, and if you say, yeah, that was a good show, John, I'll call you a liar, because I didn't make the 2014 games. As the defending Olympic champion, I failed to qualify for the 2014 Olympics, primarily because I tried to soldier on by myself and build my own sled by myself and not collaborate with perhaps other willing participants. I had worked diligently towards it by myself because nobody else was interested. And when there came an opportunity to collaborate, I chose not to, for fear of giving other people an advantage over my own hard work and giving away what I'd already worked so hard for to glean. And that was my downfall. There might have been some other things that I could have done differently, but I truly believe that my inability to work collaboratively in 2014 or in advance of 2014 put me at a disadvantage, whether I'd worked collaboratively with my teammates and other companies. or not might have changed that outcome, I'll never know. But I know that I probably would have got further and I would have been dealing with a different set of circumstances. And so we've learned all that through sport. And I would want to give others the chance, because sport is something that I think that we should, it's a right. And to call sport a privilege, I think is silly. And maybe we interchange sport with play. To be able to play as a youngster is a right. You should, especially in Canada, be able to play. And sport, I'll interchange that. You should have the capacity to play sports in Canada, organized sports with coaches and parents and community people around you cheering you on. As human beings, we need to celebrate. We need to be celebrated individually. And that can happen on a field of play. That can happen in team sports. And not to mention the individual growth that one realizes, but I guess your place in society is often shaped by your ability to interact at this level, not at school, not with your friends on the playground, but in structured, organized sport. Gives you a perspective, a view in the looking glass of what society is shaped like, what society is all about. And when you have a healthy connection with teammates and coaches and respect for authority and rules and structure, it's not about winning. It's not about losing. We don't all get ribbons, and we shouldn't. We should go out there and earn our standing and our place and be comfortable with loss and victory. And all this is set up through sport. And so giving kids the access to sport through the foundation that we've chose to work with, which is Kidsport here domestically, and RightToPlay for international ventures. RightToPlay does have a connection to Canada as well, if the Indigenous communities and the support of those local play programs. But Kidsport is in the major centers here in Canada, and in Victoria, that's who we're working with closely for trying to get kids off the sidelines and into the action. And parents can apply for a season of funding for organized sport of their child's choice. And that affects the whole family, not just the kid that's playing, but the parent who is given a little bit of reprieve from harebrained Johnny, who's at home all the time, just sort of a basket case because he's wound up with energy, to a sense of belonging, to a sense of privilege. And that can all be accessed through organized sport.
As a parent who's privileged enough to be able to have a daughter in hockey, one thing I'll add too that I never expected to come from hockey is the fact that she's just able to take that drama you hear about. And I know you have a daughter, Jon, but she's younger. It's coming. The school drama doesn't affect her in the same way because she has these teammates that she knows she can rely on. They've been through rough times. They've been on tournaments together and they have fun in the pool. They've faced hard teams and easy teams on the ice together. And she's just able to kind of put that school drama behind her a bit more easily because she's had this experience of being on a team. Speaking to your points, Jon, about the importance of being in organized sport, it's just, I never expected that to happen. It's been such a gift.
It's perspective too, right? Like she can realize that what's happening at school is but one little microcosm of life, and the pettiness that perhaps can go on amongst youngsters is not their entire world any longer when you don't have an outlet like sport to be able to expend energy through, to realize the capacity of team, to realize that life is multifaceted in so many different areas, not just school, but here at the rink and at home. And there is that separation. Like you said, the drama that goes along with life is easier to delineate. It's easier to figure out what means what belongs where. It's easier to compartmentalize, and it's easier to take the put downs that we are undoubtedly going to experience. And children and young people are often the most vile in terms of how they speak to one another. It's easier to not internalize every single word that someone says to you. And without sport, it's often easy to take all that people say and hold it near and dear to your heart and have it be what you see yourself as. And that's so not the case in life.
Do you think all the experiences that you had in sport, all the, the trials, the tribulations, and, the podium finishes, do you think that helped you in doing what you're doing now on Amazing Race? Do you think, how did that all come about? And I mean, the success that you've had, not only like being on the Amazing Race for the first time, but the success you've had as a host.
I don't know that anything was retrospectively. When you look back at these things, when you look back at a podium finish, when you look back on a career, when you look back on a race, on anything, I think retrospectively is where we gain these insights. And if you are willing to think about things, why something ended up the way that it did, good, bad, or otherwise, then that's where the lessons can be gleaned. And I think as long as we're thinking about the experiences that we have in life, we're going to be able to take something away from them. And for sure, all the experiences that I had in sport have allowed me to both appreciate what I'm witnessing on the Amazing Race Canada and be able to appreciate it. And simply because I did one of the stunts with relative ease doesn't mean that every person on that show is going to experience it the same way that I did. The same way that I couldn't imagine. You'll never see me dance on the Amazing Race Canada for the sole reason that nobody wants to watch me brutalize something. Nobody wants to watch me fall and fail and land on my face. That's not what producers are asking me there for. They will never ask me to dance on the Amazing Race Canada or do anything with a foreign language, because I'm there to try and look cool. I'm there to smile as I jump off the world's tallest precipice on a tower in Macau with a smile on my face. Even though I'm shattered internally from fear of heights, I got to try and look cool. I can't stomach it through a dance or a foreign language. And so these types of, I guess, experiences that I have on the race allow me to watch those that do everything. Let's talk about Martina in season 6, I believe it was. Martina and her brother Phil were there. She went up a pole in Squamish, like a timber pole, and she was halfway up and she was crying and shaking, visibly completely distraught. Halfway up that pole wasn't beyond my comfort zone for heights, and it wasn't certainly out of the realm of physicality that I can do. I'd go up that pole like a shot. But watching somebody who is struggling with it overcome that adversity and then push through, well, it's easy for me. Why would I be so impressed with Martina? Because I know how deep she had to dig to overcome the fear, how physically demanding it was, how her arms were so cramped that she could hardly grip the rope anymore, how every muscle in her body was absolutely exasperated. She was at the end of her rope. That I appreciate, that I respect, that I am inspired by. And because I've had my own struggles in life, I watch other people who are maybe doing it, and I revere them for pushing through. That's what allows me to appreciate and, look on with admiration for other people doing things and be inspired myself to approach the things that I have in life, which are holding me back, with a degree of can-do attitude.
Perspective is everything, and I think everybody needs a little bit of struggle. To have to push through a struggle will reward you for a lifetime, really.
Big time.
We're gonna move into rapid fire questions, if that's all right.
All right with me. It's your show. I love it.
Okay, great. My first question is, what's in your wallet?
Receipts, some credit cards, and a couple of Apple iTunes cards that I don't quite know how to use. And so they've been stuck in there without any means by which to make good on the offer on them.
I like it.
Okay, I'm going to jump in. If there was a book that you could give away to everyone you met, what book would it be?
For no other reason than sheer entertainment value, the 1 month that I had in my life where I didn't have a job, I didn't have a school to go to, and I didn't even have a place to live was June of 2000. I had just finished university, and I hadn't yet come home. And I was living on my buddy's apartment floor. We had moved out of our apartment into another one, and I was sleeping on the floor, and I read a book called Fierce Invalids Home from Hot Climates by Tim Robbins, or Tom Robbins, I think. And it was wildly entertaining. And I think right now we don't need to burden ourselves with deep thinking, with anything too developmental. And we just need to entertain ourselves and take a second to take a step back from reality and enjoy some CIA skullduggery with some deplorable actions on individuals' behalves and some pyramid-headed shaped individuals. So it rang my bell. It's one of my favorite books, and it's an escape. So here, Fierce Invalids Home from Hot Climates.
It's on my list.
Awesome. It's on the list for sure. Favorite sport to watch, favorite sport to play. And then I just got to ask, do you still skeleton just for the hell of it?
I haven't been down the toboggan track since my very last competitive run in Eagles, Austria. I came across the finish line on my final run, and never before in race history or before or after, the sun was shining directly in my face. I was blinded, couldn't see a thing as I came across the finish line and came up on my sled. And I thought that if ever there was a sign, that was it. And so I haven't taken a single run since then.
Wow.
And to watch, really the only time that I've got an opportunity to watch sport is sort of when nothing is happening, and I like to have a nap. So I think golf is one of those sports that I can really just relax to and not get too wound up about.
The narration is so relaxing.
And Olympic hockey are probably the other ones, but that's for different reasons. That's excitement.
Well, you got a great voice. You could work on being a golf commentator. That could be a side gig for you.
I could put on a Scottish accent too.
I want to hear the. We need to hear the auctioneer in.
Oh my lord!
Well, more again on the topic of levity. What are you binge watching right now that isn't sport?
We just finished F1. The newest 2019 season of F1, and there's a season for the 2018 season of F1. And we don't know anything about auto racing, never followed F1 at all, but we watch it and we can appreciate all the BS that goes on with every aspect of it. While we weren't dealing with hundreds of millions of dollars worth of budget or, incredibly high horsepower and technical machinery, we were dealing with the exact same nuanced, lifestyle of competition. And we desperately sort of cling to those days gone by of racing history that we both got to share together. Darla was a skeleton racer like myself. And so we watched this F1 series with a lot of fond memories for competition, for being a part of a team, for traveling the world, from going to stop to stop to stop, and to realize that these F1 racers, whether you're on Team Red Bull, Team Ferrari, your teammate is who you want to beat more than anybody else. If you're fourth, okay, you just missed the podium, but was one of your teammates ahead of you or behind you? If they were fifth, fourth was a great day. If they were third, by God, you might as well have just lost the number one spot, because there could be no worse position to be than fourth if one of your teammates was third. So we've been enjoying that.
I'm noticing a pattern in not only your life choices, but your interests. Like, obviously, you're a guy who likes speed, you like stimulation. I'm curious, have you seen the documentary Free Solo about the American who free climbed El Capitan?
Oh. That's a hard stop for that one. Yeah,
but the MRI they do of his brain, things that would make a quote unquote, average person, like their amygdala would just be like on fire. His was just completely baseline normal.
Yeah, most of that guy is baseline, and he's a special human being. He should be studied. He doesn't work and operate and even perceive anything the way that you and I would, from just how he perceives risk, how he internalizes it. He's tapping into a different area of his brain for some of these things. Even his memory, his ability to be able to replicate through visualization is incredibly adept, and something that maybe the masses wouldn't be able to even conceive of, knowing every finger hold and place hold, foot hold, and climbing procedure to put it all together. He didn't just go up in one shot. He planned for it meticulously, but his ability to do so while putting fear in the back seat. He's on the spectrum somewhere, and that makes him incredibly special, the way that he is wired. And I think we need to look at more individuals like him to figure out maybe how to tap into some of what he does naturally, not so that we can imbibe every aspect of our life with that, or to be able to do it with equal aplomb or whatever it is, but to be able to leverage some of the skills that he has that are unique to him.
At the CN Tower, they have the glass floor. Yep. And I watch my kids jump on it, and I'm reaching for them like, don't do that.
Yeah.
I can't walk across the glass floor. So
I mean, a lot of people would say like plunging headfirst down a toboggan run is pretty scary and not in the realm of average either.
I'd have to accept that at face value and say, yes, you are right, and you will damage your brain. It's not a sport I encourage mothers to put their children in.
So just a couple more. Biggest mistake a future Olympian can make?
Starting anything with the hopes of getting paid. You should have no expectation of getting a free ride out of becoming a elite amateur or an elite athlete in Canada. You shouldn't have the expectation that you're going to become gloriously wealthy or famous through the process, because you will be setting yourself up for defeat, for disappointment, and ultimately probably not getting out of it what has always been there, which is an amazing experience and opportunity. But if you can't see it, sometimes the forest for the trees, because you are wanting for something different, then you only have yourself to blame, because you shouldn't get involved. You know, the reason why people play sports is because it's fun and it's a great opportunity. And then somewhere in the middle, we think that we have the sense of entitlement that overtakes us. And we think that we should be getting paid for this or getting paid more. And that is in and of itself misguided and a recipe for disaster.
It's a phenomenal answer. Sandra, with the last...
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that you can top that. That was so wonderful, but I have a feeling you can top it. If you could have a billboard on the highway, what would it say?
Oh, it would say, embrace your average, be great. Because,
I love it.
You know, people always want to be the Wayne Gretzky of everything that they do, but we're humans. We're all just a bunch of fuddy-duddies and no incredible skill sets naturally. But if you accept the fact that I am average and I'm going to have to work really hard at whatever it is that I want to do and put in 10,000 hours just to sort of enter the realm of proficiency, then that's to be expected. And so embrace your averageness and get ready for some work, because we can all be great if we don't have, I guess, the preconceived notion that we're supposed to be born that way.
Okay, awesome. You convinced me. I'm doing another marathon. I'm doing it.
Atta girl. That's pulling answers out of my rear end. I haven't had an opportunity to think about that, but let's go with that.
This has been incredible, Jon. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to speak with us and educate, well, certainly me, and I think all our listeners as well.
Well, I don't know if it's educational, enlightening, but at the bare minimum, a mild bit of entertainment, and hopefully we haven't put anybody to sleep or caused them to change the dial just yet. I know they've got nowhere to go, so listen up, suckers!
Hi, my name is Amanda from Project Decimal, a financial literacy initiative from Ratehub.ca. Here's your financial tip for the week. The first savings goal you should have is to build an emergency fund. As soon as you're financially able to start saving, you're going to want to hit the ground running. You might want to start saving for a down payment on a house, or saving up for a big vacation or retirement. These are legitimate and important goals to have, and you should be proud of yourself for knowing what you want. However, before saving for anything else, you need to build a solid emergency fund. An emergency fund is used for emergencies only, meaning if your car breaks down or you lose your job, you'll have a cushion that'll allow you to pay for what you need without going into debt. Pro tip, once you create the account, change the account name to emergency fund to make what you're saving for more real. This is true for any savings account or any savings goal, not just for an emergency fund. Now, if you have existing debt, it's important to keep your debt the priority and savings secondary, but not completely off the table. Try to save at least $1,000 to $2,000 in your emergency fund while continuing to pay the minimum on your debt. Once you've reached that level, you might want to pivot back to aggressively paying down debt while slowly growing the emergency fund. A great place for your emergency fund is in a high-interest savings account because it's risk-free and easily accessible, meaning you can access the funds quickly without having to wait out a processing period. Because if it's an emergency, you'll want to have access to your money quickly. How big an emergency fund should you have? Well, it varies from person to person and depends on your level of expenses month to month. You should aim to have enough money to cover at least 3 months of expenses. If you find that your emergency fund is starting to get too big, you can separate it into 2 accounts. Because when we pool our money, we feel richer and tend to overspend. An emergency fund that's getting too big might be more tempting to dip into for non-emergency related expenses. Because remember, we see this big pool of money just sitting there and it make me feel richer. There's another benefit to having a designated fund for emergencies. When you have to dip into other savings goals to pay for some emergency event, it can feel pretty demoralizing and might make that savings goal feel unachievable because a chunk of what you've worked so hard to save just disappears overnight. So build your emergency fund before you start to save for anything else. To learn more, visit Ratehub.ca/decimal.
Thank you for listening. Thank you to Beat Chemist for providing us with our music. Find him on SoundCloud. I want to sincerely thank you for taking the time out of your own day and investing it in yourself to get smarter about money. Head over to Ratehub.ca to learn more about making smarter financial decisions. If you want to thank us, please leave a review on Apple Podcast and follow us on Spotify. Thank you for listening. Let's help Canadians choose better with their finances. This podcast is brought to you by EQ Bank and the EQ Bank Savings Plus account. Want the flexibility of an everyday checking account with a 2% interest rate? You got it. You'll also get free Interac e-transfers, free bill payments, no minimum balance, and no monthly fees. For easy banking that earns without any everyday banking fees, switch to EQ Bank today.
The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. The views and opinions expressed by Ratehub employees are those of the employees and do not necessarily reflect the views of Ratehub Inc. or any of its sponsors or officials. This is for general use. We're not certified or licensed advisors.
Yeah, we just don't want to get sued.